All right, everyone. I woke up today and was a little bit happier. I didn't get much sleep, but then I found out that Henry Kissinger had finally kicked the bucket, so I was instantaneously, 10% more relieved. Henry Kissinger, for those that don't know, was a long-term war-mad, warmongering, absolute hawk of U.S. foreign policy. He was the designer of Nixon's madman strategy. Most of you probably didn't learn about that in school. Now, the strategy went that if you looked like you were completely batshit and you were effectively waiting for an opportunity, an excuse to press the little red button, that other people would leave you alone. And so we were constantly sending sorties right into the very edge of Russian airspace and just dicking around and saying off-the-wall shit during like the Nixon era. He was one of the architects of the Cambodian bombing campaign, which technically shouldn't have been happening at all during the Vietnam War. Pragmatists will say, well, of course, when that war, there was a bunch of smuggling and shit going on in neighboring countries. That's true, absolutely. Of course, why were we in Vietnam to begin with? It's, we started doing that long before Kissinger entered the fray. It's just that we exacerbated the situation much more at the time. In the 60s and 70s, things get hotter and hotter until they explode. And of course, it's remembered as an abysmal U.S. foreign policy failure. Yeah, had we just let the troops do what troops do best and level everything in there, we would have won. At what cost? Killing a few extra million people, tens of thousands of additional casualties. Yeah, the prize wasn't really worth the calculated amount that you would have to expend in order to do so. Then you run up against potentially Chinese involvement at some point, which would have been a goddamn disaster. Kissinger has remained, until literally last night, quite a force within U.S. foreign policy, actually. He was still advising people. He was there, he was talking to Trump. He was there talking to Obama. He was there talking to W. I loved hanging out with him. He was there talking, well, he's been meeting with Biden repeatedly. He rubs elbows with the rich and famous and everyone else. And it's funny because there's some people who actually like him. If you look at the legacy media, link in the description archived, of course, this is a HuffPo's take, so naturally they sound more like me and my surmising of Kissinger. Although there were a few of those foreign conflicts that actually were justified, for instance, fighting leftist militias in nations with elected governments. I don't have a problem with the old Pinochet shuffle, just saying. Sometimes that's necessary. But for the most part, it was just world policing. Most of the conflicts that he helped to engineer or was advising on, just world policing. Mostly they didn't in the end pan out very well for U.S. foreign policy. Wasn't even helpful. At the very least, at the end of the war, you can claim some sense of pragmatism if you've accomplished your objectives. But when you end up just shifting from objective to objective continuously in a haphazard campaign that grinds on forever and costs trillions of dollars, I don't think you can really call that even a qualified success, more like an abysmal failure. But then, there are other articles that completely gloss over the war-mad rhetoric, the madman strategy, and things like that, and focus on he was a dedicated statesman. Like one of the things, like he escaped from the Nazis and he became a beloved statesman and a good friend of Xi Jinping. This is true. Apparently, the Chinese are in mourning right now for Henry Kissinger. The commies are mourning the dude. Do you really think that he could be a nice person and get mourned by both the commies and the worst war hawks in the U.S. Foreign Policy Department? Methinks not. The proof is in the pudding, though. Just, again, look up anything about Henry Kissinger and ask yourself, even if you tend to be like gung-ho Murica mode, at the very least, can you admit that it was an excessive number of conflicts, most of which didn't pan out? So it's like, okay, he's a statesman. He got along with the Chinese because the Chinese respect a warmonger. Well, that's not exactly a gold star on your character. It sounds more like other power-mad people accept you because they accept you as power-mad. So basically, you're part of the club of elite psychopaths. Now, aren't we having a problem with elite psychopaths right now trying to destroy our democracy and fiddle with our minds through censorship and psyops campaigns and propaganda all the time? Now, you'll excuse me if I don't shed too many tears for the dude dying. Now, this article may be overstating his personal blame in some of these conflicts. Again, in some cases, at least there was an element of pragmatism. There was a purpose behind U.S. involvement in the conflict. But the bigger ones all failed. I mean, he's the unseen hand behind the scenes, involved at least indirectly with every conflict since the fucking Cold War period effectively began, going all of the way back, all the way to like Nixon and Ford and even technically beyond that. How many conflicts in that time period have actually panned out? A couple of them we kind of broke even on. That's basically it. We've been consistently losing in these conflicts unless the only goal is to destabilize other nations. Like, you did a great job in Libya, because the whole goal in Libya was just to cripple Gaddafi's regime because they were afraid of a North African unity sort of thing occurring. So you accomplished the objective. Of course, tens of thousands of people died, and now there are hundreds of thousands of slaves in the country, and people that were kind of sort of making it are now living in sub-third world conditions that are more reminiscent of Haiti than anything else, and it makes all the neighboring countries nervous because of refugee movements. Oh yeah, and then there's the whole refugee movement into Europe thing, again sparked by that particular foreign policy. Now, Secretary of State at the time may have been Hillary Clinton, but Kissinger was involved. Name a conflict or a regime change or an arms running or something like Fast and Furious, literally anything with regards to warmongering foreign policy that the United States has been involved in since Kissinger first arrived on the scene involves Henry Kissinger in some measurable way, whether it's openly known or suspected behind the scenes. When I look at the plethora of nations that have had that happen, that have collapsed or undergone bloody civil wars, when wars break out, like actual like pitched battle and so forth, it all goes back to this one particular individual. He's like the goddamn angel of death. I mean, we constantly insult Russia and say Putin's a warmonger, he's power mad, he's invading these neighboring countries, he's invading Georgia, oh, now he's invading Ukraine, he's bullying NATO. There's some warmongering going on there. Kissinger takes it and injects it with steroids. But of course, he's our guy, and so, we have to go along with him. Sorry, but a globalistic war hawk is not the sort of person that I'm going to give a kind epitaph to. Henry Kissinger was a psycho. That's the long and short of it. The world is short one very, very old psycho who, even when he was still pushing 100 years old, was still meeting with presidents current and former and heads of state and stuff like that. The one piece of admiration, if I can say one positive thing about him, the dude didn't lack stamina. It's too bad that he put all of that stamina and intelligence towards such a malevolent end. That's about all. Peace out.